You would not believe how many of these I have done, and I have to hear my own voice for hours and hours and hours, and it's just, it's excruciating. Now I get to hear me say that again. So
That's okay.
yeah. Okay, cool. So I think, especially for these first couple minutes, what would be really great, and I know that you just said it to me, but just so the recording gets it too,
Sure.
Could you please say your name, where you work, the profession that you are in, how long you've been doing it? I think that's good. Yeah.
My name is Chris Ho. I'm a high school teacher at Kea'au High School, Kea'au High School. I am about to start my 6th year at that school. Prior to that, I was teaching 2 years in Nevada, in Clark County.
Cool. All right. What would you say led you to become a teacher or to become in the profession that you are in currently?
Dumb luck. I started in the business field right out of high school. I did not want to go to college. So I just started working. About 3 years later, went into college, spent about 8 years in college, getting 2 degrees. Went back into the business field for a few more years and realized that I was really good at training people and teaching people how to do things. So much so that a friend of mine said, why don't you just go student teach or like go in and like maybe substitute, go for teaching. Never thought about that. So I ended up getting a substitute position and just kind of gradually started getting credits and ultimately got a license.
Cool.
Just kind of started teaching.
Yeah. And what was your first position after a substitute, like your first full-time?
My first full-time, because I'm licensed in social studies.
Okay.
Which everyone and their mom, besides social studies and PE, those are like the 2 most common areas that people get licensed in. I started teaching world history. I hate world history.
Oh my gosh.
It's
Okay.
like 9,000 years of just everything under the sun.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of slowly started going into social studies more. Before I left Nevada, I ended up in AP Government, which I loved more than anything. With my degree in political science, it was just kind of a perfect fit.
Yeah.
And just kind of stuck with social studies for a while. And now I actually am a student activities coordinator, so I pretty much coordinate all student functions throughout the entire campus.
Sorry, I just hit a button and my FaceTime came up. I was like, no! Sorry, that threw me for a loop. Anyway, so going back really quick to you not really loving the whole world history situation, how did you kind of approach that challenge of not only something that you didn't feel that passionately about teaching, but also that maybe you didn't feel like that was your strength?
As luck would have it, the school that I was teaching at, another teacher who was there who taught world history, and not to mention AP world history, was my high school world history teacher.
That'll do it.
And I really didn't even know going into the school that she was even there until one day we were at a faculty meeting and I looked over and there she was. We hated each other in high school. She told me that her daughter was evil because I was so evil to her when she was pregnant with her that it just kind of transferred over to it's
She
weird.
told you that as a high schooler or
No.
later?
Later on.
Okay, I was like, that is so inappropriate.
And I just sat down with her one day and said, I really don't want to teach this, but I have to. And I know from personal experience, you were really good at it. So we sat for pretty much the whole year, and she would help me figure out what is it that I need to do, how can I approach it differently, that it's not showing that I'm bored with it, that I don't like it. That was probably my saving grace that whole year, was having her there to be able to say, okay, here's what we got to do, how do we do this?
Do you remember anything specific that she helped kind of guide you to do?
that year was her opening the filing cabinet and saying, okay, you got to do this unit. Here's what I do for the unit.
Okay.
And just kind of taking out her items that she had and allowing me to kind of go through which ones fit my personality a little bit more. Some things I didn't have to teach that I could kind of go a different path. And I think that was one of the biggest contributions from her to me, was realizing that I don't have to stick to a certain structure. That I can pretty much do whatever I feel is in the best interest of me being able to give the information out. Because if I can't give it out in a way that's going to capture them, what's the point of trying in the first place?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So kind of taking that learning on and moving it forward, how have you started to kind of think through when you craft your curriculums and what you're going to teach, like making sure that that is incorporated into it, like your personality and the way that you would deliver it and that kind of thing?
So the best thing about it now is that I'm in an area where there really is no set curriculum. So you actually teach leadership, which is super broad.
Right.
The only real standards that we have are ones that are given to us by NASC, which is the National Association of Student Councils. That it's just kind of suggested material that if you're going to do leadership, here's some of the things you might want to consider doing. So I kind of took that, and most of the time it's the first day asking the students, what do you want to get out of this? Why are you even here? It's an elective. You elected to be in this class. So what is it that I can give you? I think that in and itself has been a key component to being able to handle the curriculum. Just kind of giving it over to them and having them instruct me how they would like me to give it back to them.
So when you do ask for that feedback, have you tried it both verbally and written?
Yes.
And have you seen any results differing?
Yeah. So what I did at the beginning when I first started with this position about 4 years ago was to just talk about it. And it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
They were just like, what? You're the teacher. You're supposed to already have everything, like, you spoon feed us the information. Why are you asking for us to do this? So that was a lesson learned. So I stopped actually asking. So the first assignment they actually have is to write what it is that they want to get out of it. And kind of giving them a little bit of a structured curriculum that they can look at. Here's what we've done in the past. What are the things that you like out of this? What do you want to change? Because ultimately you're kind of the conductor of this whole thing. I'm just kind of here to help maneuver which way we need to go. And the written portion, by far, hands down, was like the best thing ever. To give them an assignment to say, your first grade is to create the curriculum for this class. And it's worked the past 3 years.
That is good. That kind of makes me think just about how you were kind of saying, like, oh, your kids are saying you're the teacher. I think one of the things that teachers struggle with often is setting expectations and defining roles in the classroom, especially in the older ages. Do you have ways that you kind of approach that you could share?
So with that, it's more, we have set rules and expectations for the campus. That here's our campus rules, everyone's going to follow them. Here's what we have to do. When the kids come into the class, it's more, what do you want to do? What are the top things that you feel are the most important in this classroom when you're in the room? And every single time, it's always respect. So one activity I actually did with that is we took the word respect and then they had to create words or phrases that represented each of the letters. So that was a kind of anagram, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not an English major, so I don't know.
I know what you mean.
Okay, good. So that they understand really what it is to have respect and give respect. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Both physically, emotionally. And it kind of gives them a vested interest in actually being respectful in the classroom. So a lot of times it's me saying, here's what I expect, here's what you should expect out of me. In fact, I used to draft a letter to them that I would read at the beginning of class for like the second day of kind of who I am, why I'm here, and what I'm giving them, and kind of my hopes. And every year I've always cried at the end of the letter, which for me, the whole campus knows, because like my classroom is literally the entire campus. So anytime there's assembly, I'm sitting in front of 1,000 kids. They all know to expect me to cry if I continue talking. And I think it gives them a sense of that I'm still human. Like, I'm not necessarily like the teacher. I'm a facilitator for knowledge. That ultimately the students are the teacher for me, because I learn from them every single day. So I think that helped with the setting up of the expectations for the classroom. It was not going in and saying, here's what I expect, you need to do this, you need to do that. It just creates a wall. They don't want to be in a combined kind of environment. They want to be able to express themselves.
How do you kind of orchestrate outlets for them to do that?
In the beginning, when they walk in, a lot of times the bell work is, what are you thinking right now? What's going on? So a lot of times they kind of back up a little bit. The district that I'm in is one of the poorest districts in the entire state. A lot of this, probably about 7 to 10% of our students live on land, but not in a home. Some of them live out of tents, in bushes, no running water, no electricity. So a lot of times we've got a whole bunch of other things that are external that they're bringing in with them. So when I take the time in the beginning just to find out what's going on, what did you bring today? No matter what it is. And then we kind of hold off onto it and go into the lesson that we have for the day. And usually the exit pass is taking a couple of them and just talking about it. All anonymous. They don't have, unless they want to put their name on it, they don't have to. That way it's a way to truncate, fancy word, really what they're bringing in, kind of setting it aside, realizing that we will address it, but I need to give you some information first, and then we can come back after you've had some time to kind of cool off, relax, and just kind of focus on something else. We can revisit it and now talk about it with a clear and level head.
So that's a written thing at the beginning as well, and they put it, in a box, or where do you go around and collect it, or?
It kind of varies. Sometimes it's a box, sometimes it's a hat, sometimes it's hit and miss sometimes. Sometimes I forget, because there's like so many things going on. Like, but the majority of times it's, they write it, and they just drop it off in something, and then shake it up and pull it out. We talk about it, and it also helps for the other students who may be going through something similar to that to not feel so alone. So it helps to hear their friends or their classmates or schoolmates kind of have different opinions than them on how to handle the situation.
Do you read all of them out, or just pick a few?
We pick a few. If we have more time, then we'll try to get through all of them. And usually the disclaimer is, if we don't get to it and we really need to talk about it, stay after class and we can kind of discuss it one-on-one. Because a lot of times it's not something like hugely drastic. Some of them are like, my girlfriend just broke up with me, or this guy's been texting my girlfriend and I don't really appreciate it. Just like random trivial things that adults are like, really? That's really what you... Okay.
That's what's going on, though.
To them, it's like the world has just ended and they don't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah. So true. Okay, cool. I got kind of wrapped up in all of that, so I didn't really use any of the questions that I wrote down, but that's okay. I'm going to come back to a couple of them. I think what we have is way better. So, let's see. Actually, you hit on a lot of these without me even asking. I guess an interesting thing here is within your journey, I guess, within the education world, what do you think your biggest obstacle has been thus far?
There's been like little hurdles. Mm-hmm. There hasn't really been like a ginormous obstacle. I'd probably have to say one of the obstacles is definitely understanding how education is structured in different states. Mm-hmm. Getting my license in Nevada, like you just went to one place, you turned in your paperwork, you had your interview, and then you were good to go. Moving to Hawaii is a whole different ballgame. You have Hawaii Teacher Standards Board and the DOE, who do not talk to each other very often. To get your license, you have to submit to both places 2 separate times, and I just didn't understand. Like, how is it that you guys have 2 completely separate places for the same exact thing? Why? So it's just like the little things that you don't really know as a new teacher moving somewhere, because it doesn't really spell it out until you ask. I applied at the Department of Ed, and they said, "Oh, did you get your license from over here?" And I'm like, "No. Am I supposed to?" Like, yeah. Oh, okay. I wish I would have known that like a month ago.
Yeah.
And then most of the time, it all boils down to your administrators. Mm-hmm. You can have some really, really amazing administrators that want the world to just be whatever you want it to be, and then you get some that you sit in your room and wonder, am I gonna get fired tomorrow? I think that for a lot of people, it has boiled down to that large obstacle of how do I do what I know is right for the students when everyone else is telling me I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. Especially, we haven't talked about parents at all. That's obviously a huge opinion in how you teach your own students. So you have your administration on one side, you have your parents on the other side, and then you have yourself there in the middle, the one who's actually there in the classroom every day. How do you kind of handle the information from all those inputs and still, I guess, how you were saying, how do you still make the choices that you make, I guess?
And I'm still the newbie on campus. I think I'm like the 3rd person at the bottom of the totem pole. Mm-hmm. Everyone on our campus has probably been teaching for 10 to 30 years. So the one thing that I've always done and has always kind of been the thing that defines me is the student comes to the student is first and foremost. No one else matters. Because the administrator's not sitting there getting educated, the parents not sitting there getting educated, the student is. So from day one, even when the parents come in for parent-teacher conferences or open house, I always tell them, I am not going to call you if your child is failing. That is not my responsibility, that's theirs. They need to have ownership in their education. If they can't have it, then it's failing them already. Mm-hmm. So what I do is build the students' belief in themselves that they're kind of the master of their own education, but ultimately they're responsible for when it goes right and when it goes wrong. And there's a lot of my colleagues that are like, you can't do that. The principal said you have to call if they're failing. You have to call if they're absent. Why? Why do I have to be the one to hold the student accountable when they need to be learning to hold themselves accountable? Because once they leave, after 4 years of free education and have to go pay for it, if we've held their hand the whole entire time And suddenly we let go and we haven't taught them how to walk alone. Have we really done what is in the best interest of them, or passing them on to somebody else? No.
Right.
So I do take in what everybody says, but ultimately the only person that I care the most about is the student. Because that's the one I see every single day in and day out.
I think with that particular example, it wouldn't necessarily trickle down this way, but have you ever had a situation where you were getting different inputs from different people who actually did have a direct way to address the student? So it was kind of like mixed messages almost, between authority figures.
Yes.
How have you handled that one?
So with our campus, we have one principal and 3 VPs.
Okay.
And a lot of times what the principal says, the other 3 don't get, or he just kind of says something and the other 3 are like, what? And then they kind of they interpret it their own little way.
Right.
Which hurts when we get down to teacher evaluation. When you say the principal told us this, well, I'm your evaluator, and that's not what I want you to do.
Yeah.
I want you to do this. So then ultimately it boils down to, what does our contract say?
Right.
The contract says the main authority figure is the principal. And that's the one thing that I've told every teacher that has come to our campus that's new is whatever the principal tells you, that's what you do, period. Unless the complex area superintendent comes out and says, I need you to do this, which he never does. Whatever the principal says, that's what it is. If it's, you need to greet your students at the door, you greet your students at the door. But at the same time, the other side of that is double check to make sure what he tells you to do is contractually appropriate. Because there are certain things that he has asked us to do that I'm having to flip through the contract and show him on the page, okay, this page, this line, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just being able to stand up for yourself. Like, if you're getting all these mixed messages, make sure they're in writing. Never take anything that is said to you verbally and then roll with it. Always reply back to them in the email, you told me to do this on this day at this time for this particular thing. I just wanted to make sure that that is true, you want me to do this. 9 times out of 10, they're going to back off and say, no, it's okay, because they don't want to have it in writing.
Right.
I think probably the one thing that has saved me for countless years was our office manager telling me, always CYA. CYA till the day you die.
I know exactly what that means. And yes. Very fair. It's a little bit of an off-the-wall question, but if you were to become principal of your school tomorrow, what is the one thing that you would want your teachers to do?
Smile every day. No matter coming from the Aloha State and actually have to give a speech on Aloha to a group of students in another state, one thing that always stands out to me is smile, because you never know why the other person's not. And a lot of times our kids come to campus and all they really want is someone to acknowledge their existence and smile at them. Say hello. Greet and treat them as a human being, not as a number. So if I were principal, ultimately the very first thing is I would want the teachers to set aside whatever they're coming to work with and know that the kid that's sitting in front of them, you may be the one person that has smiled at them, or has greeted them, or has treated them with any shred of dignity and respect in the past hour, 20 minutes, day. They may have walked onto campus and found out that their parent died in a car accident. And just need that one person to smile at them. Just kind of reassure them that everything's going to be okay. And then teach in a way that you want to teach. I think the biggest thing that irritates me about principals is they've been out of the class for however long they've been out. And to tell a teacher, I need you to teach this, I need you to teach this in this way. I need you to make sure you do this. Why? Who are you to tell me how to teach them? Let's do this together. Figure out what's in our best interest to get them ready to leave. Like teaching to the test, because the test is so good at judging whether or not a student is able to succeed.
Right.
Or am I teaching them to be able to be an adult?
Yeah, I think that is the actual biggest thing that I've heard from the high school teachers that I've talked to is that they always are saying it's less about, it's a little bit less about academic development and really more about development as a human being, like as a person in the world, and how to get them to that point. And the question that I always ask back to that is, that's great, and I totally agree, but how are you measuring that? How is that measurable at all? In a way that you, not necessarily like to report up and, through the system or anything, but even anecdotally through your own perception of them in the classroom.
And my answer to that would be, we can't. No,
Yeah.
It's one of those, if I had an answer to that, I would be the richest teacher on the planet. But I think for high school teachers, as they progress through the grades, a way to measure that particular piece is are they socially adapted to the age in which they are, and the area in which they live, that you can take them out of the school, put them onto the street, and they know what to do. Do they have those life skills? And a lot of it is common sense, which is probably one of the hardest things to teach somebody. The way they look at it, I'm not teaching content, I'm teaching strategies on how to handle things. And a lot of times students ask, why do I have to learn history? Like, it's already done. What's the purpose? And it always takes me back to those who don't learn history are due to repeat it, which is always the easy cop-out for any history teacher to tell a student.
Yep.
But ultimately, it helps when you have an idiot for a president, and you say, okay, look, here's what they're doing. Here's what they did back then. What do you think's going to happen next?
Class, flip to page 50 of your,
Yeah, so we're going to chart this one. So we'll put this on the board here. Let's give it about a month and see what happens. Oh, it matches exactly. Oh, okay. See, we learned. I think that's probably the hardest thing for teachers is to realize that it's not always about the content. It's how you get through the content that the student's going to remember for when they have to take something similar in college and they get stuck because you're not there to help them with it. And they can think back and say, okay, I learned this particular strategy with this subject. Let's see if it works. And they try to apply.
Do you have an example of what that would be? Like in terms of like a studying skill that you would try to get them to remember?
Oh, that's easy. Have it. I think one of the biggest ones is teaching them to not over-highlight. In the beginning, when I have the students highlight and I give them papers, it usually goes from white to either yellow, pink, green, orange, purple, every color under the sun. And then as the year progresses, it slowly starts to turn back to white. So it's more helping them understand that there's going to be key portions of sentences, paragraphs. The whole paragraph's not important. Because every single article that's in that sentence, the, at,
Yeah.
it's irrelevant. It's a filler. So you're telling me that those words are important because you highlighted them? No. Let's look at what are the big words. What are the ones that have impact and meaning? That they can actually then start applying that, whether it's reading in college in English 101 class, to writing your doctoral thesis, and having to do that research and kind of pull things out, to just doing keyword searches on Google for something they need the answer to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All fair tools. Okay, so now we've covered a lot of ground. I have one more question for you, and it is the broadest and the most fun.
Purple.
Great, we're done. That's it. No. If one of your friends had decided to join the education profession and be a teacher, what would you say to them? Like, they took you out to coffee. They're like, oh man, what do I do? Like, what's your advice for me? Like, what is the first thing that you would say?
Don't go into middle school. No. It actually happened to me, but in the reverse. I asked my teacher, I told her I want to be a teacher. And the first thing out of her mouth was, are you crazy? No, don't do it. Absolutely don't do it. But with her, it was, I've never listened to you a day in my life. Out of the 5 years that I've had you, I'm not going to start now. So when somebody does ask me that question, I think back to what she had said to me and telling me that. And I don't want to be that person. And I love her to pieces, but I don't want to be that person. I want to be able to tell somebody that is a great choice. We need more people like you in the field of education, helping these students become adults. Don't worry about the really crappy pay, because if you're in it for the money, Starbucks is right down the street. You can go work there. You got to be in it for the passion, for the look on their face when they finally get something right and they understand it. Oh, God, if I could bottle that, that's just like, it's like the essence of just pure, unadulterated, innocent, like, goodness.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'd have to ask them, how thick is your skin? Because you're going to walk through a gauntlet of people telling you that you're wrong, you're stupid. They don't understand why you decided to do this, because obviously you were not thinking clearly. But knowing that every day is a new day, every minute's a new minute, you just got to roll with it, and know that in the long run, you're creating better citizens of the world, regardless of where they go. Yeah.
You've convinced me. All right.
Well, there's so much. I mean, that is a very broad question.
It is. It's hard to capture.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that,
Good. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop